It is Willow and Yerevan here, and we are welcoming you to our second episode of Dark Moon Podcast today. Today we have a show that is very suitable for the Taurus moon that we are in currently. We're going to be talking about the Bayer-Monsanto merger. We are going to be talking about communication with plants and animals. We're going to be talking about gardening, do-it-yourself gardening, and kind of guerrilla gardening in the face of the genetically modified onslaught, the chemical laden onslaught that we have going on. Yerevan has been gracious enough to choose a flower essence for us today that can be used to combat evildoer fatigue. Because I know this late into the Pluto and Capricorn era, we are all having some pretty intense evildoer fatigue. We're sick of these buggers. We're sick of these buggers, and it kind of, it can kind of wear you down after a while. So we're going to have a protective flower essence from Yerevan that will help us to combat these nasty dynamics that are going on. And Yerevan will also tell us about her flower essences book, which is awesome, and you can purchase that online as well. So hello, Yerevan. Thank you for joining us for Dark Moon number 2.
Hey Willow, thank you. Thank you as well for joining, and I'm sorry about that noise. That there was an airplane overhead, and I'm just experimenting with the outdoor thing since we're talking about plant communication today.
Yeah, no problem. It'll just add some ambiance to what we're doing, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about some nice, healing, healthy topics. But first, we have to get the nasty beast out of the way, which is the Bayer-Monsanto merger, which has just been approved in the United States. Just been approved in the United States as Uranus moved into Taurus. Again, you have to wonder, are these things being planned? Is it just naturally happening that way? Because Uranus, of course, relates to technology and also biotechnology, and Taurus relates to food, agriculture, etc. So, the astrological symbolism is sort of set up for, unfortunately, this kind of big push into this monster corporation. There's been a lot of protests around the world, particularly in Germany, because there's actually a huge amount of protests against Bayer in Germany, because Bayer is understood as the toxic, destructive, murderous corporation that it is in Germany in a way that it is not understood, I don't think, so much in Canada and the US. In Canada and the US, Bayer is most often associated with aspirin, right? So seemingly innocuous, which even aspirin is not seemingly innocuous, by the way. It's also toxic in certain respects. So there's been a lot of protest against the Bayer-Monsanto merger going on in Germany. And unfortunately, my intuition told me that this merger was a done deal before, that they were jumping through the hoops for the public, but that it was basically a done deal. Because once you understand that the government regulatory agencies are basically the same people that are running Bayer and Monsanto, it's all sort of tied into this global power web. You can't really expect them to divert from the plan, right? And the plan was to merge these corporations. And we've had all 6 major GMO corporations merging over the past 2 years. So Dow DuPont merged into one massive corporation, Syngenta ChemChina merged into one massive corporation, and now we have Bayer-Monsanto merging into one massive corporation. And so, of course, this just creates, more power for these corporations, more resources, more domination of the market. The way Bayer got around, so there was people were arguing the antitrust, anti-monopoly angle, which is obviously very valid and should have been heeded. But the way Bayer got around those antitrust laws was that it sold off its genetically modified line. So it sold off its Liberty Link line. So that it could then take on Monsanto's much huger genetically modified line, which includes Roundup Ready, which is kind of the big one, but also a number of other ones. So there's been some kind of slick corporate maneuvers to get this, to get around the antitrust laws. which, surprise, surprise, right? And again, it has just gone through in the States just very recently with Uranus in earliest of Taurus. So for anyone, I mean, I'm sure most people are aware that, of who Monsanto is, but really, I would encourage people to bone up on Bayer as well, because Bayer is equally as hideous and destructive and murderous as Monsanto, going, way back to the 1800s. So, and I've written about that on my blog. So if you'd like to, I guess we can also link to some of those articles under this video. If you'd like to kind of go into that would be beneficial, because what's happening right now is Bayer is trying to sweep under the rug Monsanto's bad reputation, right? So it's actually not, the name Monsanto, I don't think, will even be used anymore. So it'll be, it'll just sort of consume the bad rep and the dirty dealings of Monsanto. And so, this doesn't really change things all that much for people who are really up on these issues, because the millions against Monsanto will just transfer to the billions against Bayer, right? And the march against Monsanto will turn into the march against Bayer-Monsanto. So, we're still on your case. We're still on your case, corporate evildoers. You're not shaking us off. We weren't born yesterday. We're not going to fall for just you changing the name of what you're doing, right? So anyway, good times there. Good times there. So basically, what I would like to do now, if this is conducive with you, Yerevan, is just to mention the genetically modified foods that are currently on the market, and just maybe give some people some tips on how they can avoid those, because it's very confusing, and I get that it's very confusing, but they're intentionally making it confusing for us, because then people will just give up. I mean, I understand that people are absolutely stretched to the max as far as time, energy, sanity, everything, and the system is speeding up and demanding more and more, intentionally, right, to keep people so busy that they don't have the time to research this stuff. They don't have the time.
That is such an important point that I want to talk about that all in itself in another episode, but thank you.
Absolutely. So this is an intentional thing that's going on. We're intentionally being disconnected from food, right? There are people out there who actually believe that the food comes from the supermarket. They don't know where the food comes from. They don't know that those are actually plants. Those are animal products. This comes from the soil. This comes from, hard-working farmers and ranchers that are producing this, right? And this disconnect is intentional. So the thing that's great is that Yerevan and I are researchers, so we can do this kind of research, and we can bring this up for you guys, but you have to do your part, okay? So we can bring this up and we can yell it from the rooftops. And I've been working on this issue since 2011 intensively, on the GMOs in general. But we need people to actually take action on it. So you need to be putting pressure on your grocery stores. You need to be sourcing your food from farmers markets, from community supported agriculture. You need to be asking questions about, how is that food produced? Is that food produced with genetically modified organisms? Is that food produced with chemical herbicides and pesticides? Are those animal products being produced with, growth hormone implants? Are they being produced with routine antibiotic use? Goes on and on, right? So we have to start taking a stronger interest in food, and I know people are just stretched. They are just stretched. But what's going on is that they're poisoning our food supply, okay? They're poisoning our food supply, and they're also altering our DNA and altering our genetic lines without our permission, with these foods, okay? You can maybe talk to this a little bit, Yerevan, is probably part of the transhumanism agenda, or at least, maybe creating infertility, something along those lines. Do you see a connection there?
Absolutely. I mean, it's in order to make the end result, in my understanding, is just to make humans even more programmable. even
Yes.
more easily controlled and used for certain purposes, to be continued to be used as this slave race.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed. So when you really break it down, and Yerevan and I are breaking it down for y'all, there is nothing really more important than this kind of stuff, okay? There is really nothing more important than getting on top of this and stopping poisoning yourself and stopping poisoning your family, okay? We have an epidemic of digestive disorders, allergies, food sensitivities, autoimmune disorders. And you have to ask yourself, okay, well, these same symptoms are showing up in the animal feeding trials that have been fed genetically modified diets and have been exposed to glyphosate, which is the primary ingredient in Roundup. So when we then eat those, those foods, what effect do you really think it's going to have? I mean, BT corn, for example, is produced with a toxin inside of it that explodes insects' stomachs when they eat it, okay? And then we're feeding that to either ourselves directly through corn syrup, or we're feeding it to animals, and then we're eating the animal products from that. Well, what effect, blowing up...
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, just along those same lines, that even pigs and cows are getting really bad indigestion, and they're giving
Absolutely
the equivalent of Tums to these animals.
Oh, I did not know that. But I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It makes perfect sense. So it's really, really important that we get just down to the basics of, okay, what are GMOs? And where are they in our food supply, and how can we eliminate them? Okay, so I'm just going to go down a quick list of what is known to be genetically modified at this time, and then I will also put a warning out about what I believe will be an onslaught of new GMOs put onto the market that will not be labeled. Okay, so the current situation. In this, and we're talking U.S. and Canada here, because Europe is still, luckily for the Europeans, have laws against these things. Canada and the U.S. seem to be the only two. We seem to be a petri dish here. We seem to be a human experiment going on here with this stuff, or perhaps just an extermination project. I really don't know at this point, but. Okay, so corn in conventional corn, and I will also make a distinction that organics are intentionally produced without GMOs, but they can be unintentionally contaminated with GMOs. So the best route still is to go organic, because there's been at least some effort to keep out GMO ingredients. Okay, but conventional corn, conventional soybeans, conventional canola, conventional beet sugar, which is sucrose, I believe, alfalfa, cotton. So alfalfa has not dug in Canada yet, but it has definitely dug in the States, and it's spreading to the natural alfalfa crop as well. Okay, so corn, soybeans, canola, beet sugar. Those are all things that are used extensively in processed foods. So pretty much any processed food that is conventionally produced, so i.e. not organic, is going to have some degree of GMO ingredients in it, okay? And these ingredients won't always just be listed as corn, right? So corn syrup obviously is a huge one. Almost all the corn syrup is genetically modified at this point, in all the sweet goodies and all this type of thing. And I will just say as an aside, Nestle has put out a statement that it's going to label its products no GM ingredients, but it's taken out corn syrup, but it's still sourcing its milk from dairy cattle that are being fed a GM diet. So
it's just trendy. It's just trendy to say things are GM.
Oh, totally, no GMO, exactly. So it's like, what, Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you completely. And they're just cashing in on it. And it's like, again, these labels have really no teeth. They have no meaning at this point, because there are GM ingredients in it. It's just how they define GM ingredients, right? Okay, so processed foods, you are going to find genetic modification in them. And yeah, I know it's a bummer, right? Because when you're so stretched for time, it's so easy to just grab something that you throw in the oven or throw in the microwave or whatever. a box of cookies or a box of whatever, you know, it's easy, it's fast, it's quick. It's also toxic and it's killing you. Okay, like not to be too like, you know, in your face about it, but it's true. So the other thing is that you have to look at the way that these things are disguised. Okay, so it may just say corn syrup, canola oil, something like that, and you can pick up right away. Okay, well that's going to have a genetically modified ingredient. But for example, maltodextrin is in a lot of products, and that's a derivative of corn. So if that's a conventional product, that's going to be a genetically modified ingredient. Lecithin, sorry, Irvin, I know you've heard this before because we've talked about this before, but lecithin is a derivative of soy. So if you see lecithin on a product, and this also goes for health products, health food products as well. Okay, I just did a little webinar, and I believe there are 36,000 registered natural health products out in the world, and only 8% are no GMOs. 8% of those. So even when you're going into the health food store, you have to be vigilant about this stuff. Even in your supplements, your vitamins,
Definitely.
your protein shakes.
We could go into that some other time as well, but I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, you do have to be vigilant. But once you know once you know what to look for, you know, it becomes clear. Okay. The other thing is that corn and soy, alfalfa. Corn, soy, and alfalfa are also widespread livestock feeds. Okay, so if you're eating a conventional animal product, again, non-organic animal product, and you haven't sourced it from like a local rancher that you know does not use GMOs, it is going to be GMO. Okay, so that animal product is going to be produced from animals that have been fed a genetically modified diet, which has been shown to cause, again, all of this health damage, digestive damage, reproductive damage, organ damage, tumors, premature death. What else can what else is going on? Just, you know, all kinds of insanity. So we're harming these animals, which is, you know, again, I would say an animal rights element that needs to be picked up more strongly is the fact that, you know, these animals are being fed this crap, and then we're eating that stuff. And then, of course, not least of all, is that they've been linked to DNA changes. Okay, so again, our DNA is literally being altered without our permission. The DNA of these animals is being altered without their permission. So it's, you know, it's a big thing. Okay, so that's kind of the hidden element of GMOs, the hidden stuff that's in there. There is a little bit of sweet corn, like corn on the cob, that is GMO as well, kind of hit or miss. So, you know, again, ask your grocer, you know, ask these questions, because that starts the ball rolling. It gets the conversation flowing. It gets people being held to task for what they're selling to the public, you know. So we really do need some of that going on. Okay, then the other thing that is going on is whole fruits and vegetables that are genetically modified. And so the ones that are kind of known about now, currently, are, okay, papayas. I did not know that. Papayas are almost, if you're getting a papaya from Hawaii, it's almost across the board going to be genetically modified. Did not know that. Mushrooms, they're getting into mushrooms that basically don't go bad, you know, genetically modified to not go bad. Summer squash, so zucchini. This one shocked me too. I didn't know zucchini was being screwed with, but it is. So the kind of like, you know, dark green, well, it could be any color, I guess, but summer squash that you find in the supermarket, again, we need to be vigilant on that now, because they've forced GMO zucchini onto the market without any labeling. GMO salmon. Now this is where it's really getting sick, and they are genetically modifying animals. They have genetically modified salmon to grow, I think, 3 times as fast as a natural salmon would. Okay, and you know, this is again, timed to perfection, because what we're experiencing right now is we're experiencing a collapse in the natural salmon population due to Fukushima fallout. Fukushima fallout being the tipping point that is causing a massive collapse in the Pacific Ocean ecosystem right now. And salmon, Chinook salmon this year are coming back 5 to 10% of the 10-year mean. So that means like the average amount of salmon that there were over the past 10 years, this year there's only 5 or 10% of them. And the thing about the salmon, I believe, is that they sort of hibernate for 5 years before they hatch or something like that. So basically what we're getting this year is kind of the first batch of salmon that has been full on exposed to Fukushima fallout, like for the past 5 years, right? And now they're kind of I'm not sure exactly how that works, but anyway, it's a situation where the numbers were kind of normal, and then now they've just absolutely dropped off, and that was expected because of this hibernation period of the salmon. So those salmon are put out by the company Aqua Bounty. Okay, so if you see salmon being sold, actually, honestly, I wouldn't buy any farmed salmon at this point because they are often raised with hormones, antibiotics, all kinds of crap in the water. The water's filthy that they're born into. It's not good. So, but Aqua Bounty is one corporation to steer clear of. Potatoes. Okay, so in particular, so far all I've been able to find is that white russet potatoes are being genetically modified, and it is it's 3 varieties of white russets, and they're from the brand name JR Simplot. So that's another corporation. Again, if you see anything labeled JR Simplot, or again, you can ask your produce manager, are these Simplot potatoes? I believe the genetically modified line is called Innate. Really funny, hey? Innate.
Yeah.
It's like it's just natural. It's just innate. Okay, and then the final one that I have here is apples, and this is creepy as heck as well. They have created a non-browning apple. So basically, it's been genetically modified so that you can cut an apple and it won't go brown for, I don't know, 3 weeks, a month, something like that. So
just what we needed for an aesthetically pleasing apple.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't handle any brown on my apple. Like, really. Joni Mitchell would be all over this, right? So yeah, so those apples, and this is really, really creepy to me because these are produced in the province that I live in, just a few hours away, by Okanagan Specialty Fruits. And Okanagan Specialty Fruits is another company that you need to be aware of and be avoiding their products as well. They're marketing these apples under Arctic apples. And they've also created an apple snack called App Bits, which is a dried apple product that they're selling on Amazon.com. Okay, so there's a lot we need to be aware of, but it's still kind of a fairly small segment of the marketplace, right? It's only these certain companies that are putting these products out. So it should be fairly simple still to get confirmation from your produce manager. Where is this food coming from? Is it coming from these corporations? Et cetera, et cetera.
If only enough people cared, because apathy is
You're telling me, girl. Yeah, I know. So, but this is the thing, right? Like, you either care now or you care 30 years from now when your child is, diagnosed with cancer or has some horrible autoimmune disorder or whatever, right? So care now or it'll come back to bite you later. And yeah, I know that sounds crappy, but like, we are in times where people have to get it together. And if they don't, like, I'm scared of the consequences, Well,
I heard this saying once, better to prepare than to repair. I don't even remember who said it, but it's
yes, agreed.
Situation.
Like, be proactive here, because now is the time. Because the thing is that they've been slowly slowly putting this stuff insidiously into the food system since the 90s. Okay, so it's been step by step by step. But now with Uranus and Taurus, I would suspect, just from what's going on, that we are going to see an onslaught of genetically modified foods out there that are not being labeled. And the reason for that is that they've changed how they do genetic modification. So conventional genetic modification involved adding a gene to a seed that would not naturally be found in that seed. So it was a gene from a virus or from an animal or from a bacteria or something that would cause the plant that grew from that seed to be able to withstand massive doses of chemical herbicide and pesticide. Okay, so again, that's the secondary thing, is that these carcinogenic chemical pesticides and herbicides are being used to such an insane degree at this point that, I mean, it's carcinogenic, it's toxic to us as well. It likely has neurological effects and effects on hormones and all of this type of stuff. Sorry, totally lost my train of thought there. Yes. Okay. So that's the conventional use of GMOs. But what they're doing now is they have what's called gene editing technology, which they're calling CRISPR technology, CRISPR, and this technology actually removes a gene from a plant or animal. And so what the companies are claiming is that, we don't need any regulation because we're not changing this plant. All we're doing is taking a gene out of this plant. However, surprise, surprise, what they've found is that, and sorry, I hope I'm not talking too loud. I just get really passionate about this subject. But
no, I feel the same way about these things. So please continue.
Okay, good. So what they found is that when they remove a gene, I mean, does this not just make sense? Do we not understand anything about holism and how things actually fit together and function together? Apparently not. Science is just so blind to this, in my mind, conventional science. So when they remove a gene, they actually cause all of these unintentional genetic mutations in the plant or animal that they're removing the gene from. So in other words, we have genetically mutated, again, stuff that's going to mess with our DNA, and who knows how it's going to affect us, because it hasn't even been tested on the human population. We are the test subjects, right? So what I see with Uranus and Taurus is that they have this new in. And this is a little bit more scary because it's going to actually be whole fruits, vegetables, and animals that are on the market that you're eating, and you're not going to know that it's gene mutated food, So anyway, this is basically it in a nutshell. Eliminating conventional processed foods, I would say, is just a good idea, period. The GMO issue is the critical one, but it's not good stuff. Eliminating conventional animal products and buying and using only organic would be another, or obviously if you're vegetarian or vegan, vegetarian would still use eggs and cheese, but if you're vegan, it doesn't matter. But if you are, because you don't come into contact with it anyway. Although I would really encourage animal rights activists to get on this, because the thing is that these animals exist, whether you think they should exist or not, they exist, and they're being damaged and hurt by these GM diets. So this is a huge issue, not just for human beings, but also for the animal population. So processed foods, the animal products, and then really talk to your grocery manager. Okay, talk to your grocery manager. Find out where this stuff is being sourced. Encourage/demand your grocery manager to label this stuff. Because they can do it on their end. I don't believe there's any laws where they can't say, oh, this is a non-GMO zucchini. And then people know that's a non-GMO zucchini. As long as they're trustworthy, right? And then, like I say, these other corporations you're looking for, Simplot, Aqua Bounty, Okanagan Specialty Fruits, there'll be more to look into, but those are some of them that are coming out, because I really do think so. We currently have Uranus and Taurus, and it'll be in this sign for 8 years, and so we have all these big mergers happening right at we have this Bayer-Monsanto merger happening just as Uranus enters Taurus, and that does not bode well. That is a huge surge forward for them during this 8-year period where they are just going to be putting the pedal to the metal on all of this stuff. So the other things you can do, again, farmers markets, and talk to your producers. Make sure community supported agriculture. Grow your own. Growing your own is a huge help. But we can turn this tide. We just need people to give a crap, basically, and to take some action.
Yes, and since you've mentioned it, and I know there are many people living in apartments and, crowded urban cities who can't grow a garden, and it's not as accessible to them, whether it's the farmer's market or, they can still take some action, and also people who have very busy lives. I want to explain how even those people can become more proactive and make this work for them, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. However, even if it does take a little bit more time out of your day, you will save so much more time in the long run, and medical bills. As we age, certain things slow down and we need more help, and a lot of people could avoid many of the pitfalls of aging if they took better care of themselves when they're young and eat right. And they say health starts in the gut. I mean, what we are digesting, if we're not properly digesting our food, it will make the whole body toxic. And so it's so worth it to just slow down a little bit. Uranus is in Taurus now, which is
exactly
methodical, very on purpose, being aware, not making any hasty decisions. So maybe experiment doing the same thing when you are in the supermarket and you're looking at all the choices and they're so overwhelming, and oh, that's on sale, I should grab that. Oh, this is sugar free, or this is gluten free, I should get it. Does it?
Maybe not.
Yeah. They so few of them have it right. So few of these products or companies have it right. They might have certain things missing, but then they have, oh great, agave syrup, which messes the whole thing up.
Yeah.
Which is also very high glycemic for those avoiding
sugar.
So just take the time. And all you have to do is maybe simplify your diet. Instead of a bag of chips or a candy bar, have a banana or something. Nature's provided all the desserts for us. It doesn't mean you can never have a piece of pie or never enjoy life or enjoy your food, but there are solutions for those who are looking for them.
Yes, absolutely. And there are, there are actually huge developments with indoor growing operations. You can buy it at IKEA. You can buy like an indoor operation to grow vegetables in your apartment. You can get community garden space. And yeah, I know that's sometimes inaccessible if you don't have a vehicle. That was the case for me when I lived in the city as well. So it's just about doing whatever you can. For me, I didn't have garden space and I live in an apartment, and miraculously my landlord was totally cool with me creating garden space in the lot beside our building that he owns. So, you might be surprised. And I, honestly, one of my garden beds is like 2 feet wide and about 20 feet long, and it's just along a hedge. It's a tiny little strip of ground, and you would be shocked how much food I get out of there every year. So it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can just literally dig up, if you have permission, right? You can literally just dig up grass and, maybe spruce the soil up a little bit with some compost or some manure or something if it's not, highly viable. But it's really, I think another thing is that because we're in this intentionally accelerated, like, digital world that is becoming so artificial, the antidote during Uranus and Taurus is, as Yervon says, to simplify and to slow down and to kind of go back to basics, go back to a whole foods diet, and see if you can grow some of your own. Get your hands dirty, be around plants, be outside, be touching and tactile and physical in the world, and ground yourself in this world, because it's so easy to get caught up in the cell phone and the computer and the the social media and, you know, this and that. And this is really the antidote. Like, you know, it's not like you have to become a farmer, but just to have that connection, that reconnection with nature and with plants and with food, and to understand that this stuff grow. You don't just get this at the supermarket. You grow this from a seed. You grow this from a tiny plant. It grows up. You take care of it, and then you harvest it and you eat it, and it's delicious, and you know that it's organic. It doesn't have chemicals on it. It's not GMO. It's not full of crap that's going to hurt you. Well, you know, with chemtrails, with Fukushima fallout, that would be, you know, that probably would be up for debate, but it's the best we can do, right? It's the best we can do at this point with our circumstances. And really, that's what we're looking for at this point. We're looking for small actions of resistance and of choosing a better route. And there is an element of going back to the simple things, as Yervon points out. That is an antidote to this crazy neurological overload, you know, overdrive type of society that we're being kind of guided into.
Absolutely, and it's so rewarding and relaxing to just step away from it all, even for a few minutes.
Yes.
Like you said, we're so stimulated,
Absolutely.
we're so bombarded by all of this technology, and I notice sometimes when I get caught up in it, I even hesitate to go outside. For some reason, I've become so used to being crammed and limited and distracted that it takes a lot of motivation to get my foot out the door. But once I do, I'm like,
Yes.
oh, what took me so long?
Yeah.
Why
This
did
is
I wait to
awesome.
come outside and plant my feet in
Yeah.
the soil? And they've even done studies. This might sound woo-woo, I don't know, but I think there's something to it, where they call it earthing. You just get your bare feet somewhere on the ground. It could be the snow, it could be the dirt, but it actually has a certain charge that can regenerate your body or help you recover faster from stress or illness.
I absolutely believe that would be the case. Yep.
It's just like an automatic reset button.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, we absolutely need to get reconnected with nature. And, you know, yeah, this sounds kind of privileged from us because we live in nature, quite nature filled areas still, but the thing is that you can find this anywhere. I've lived in many different places across many different provinces and territories, and I've lived in urban, right in the inner city. There are still ways that you can do this. You can go to a park, you can go to a community garden, you can just find a little scrap of grass somewhere and sit down and take your shoes off and just, sit there and chill for a bit, hang out with a tree. Like literally, this is stuff that needs to happen. And push for more green space, ask for more green space. Ask for what you need, and sure, you may be disappointed, but you may be surprised at the number of people who intuitively know this. There are a lot of people who still have a soul connection to them, even if they are operating within the mainstream system, who are going to want to help that, who are going to want to, maybe they have an old lot that nobody's using, and they would be happy for someone to develop it into something like that. Maybe they have even maybe they'll allow containers outside a building. You can grow a lot of food in containers in just whatever you can grow it in.
Heck,
so
I've even seen people grow things out of old shoes.
Oh, really?
Works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's everything. Anything can pretty much be a receptacle, I imagine. So it's going to take kind of breaking the spell, like you say. And I'm the same way. You get in this, it's almost like mesmerized by technology, and you get kind of in this zone and you almost forget that there is a natural world out there. And it's going to require breaking it and leave the goddamn cell phone at home. Like that is, you know what I mean? It's the addiction to these cell phones that is, it's like a puppet on a string with these cell phones. Like break the habit, break the addiction to the cell phone. Just leave it at home for half an hour. Go out for half an hour, baby steps, right? If you're panicked about leaving it, just, You know, it's like leaving your baby with a babysitter for the first time. You just take baby steps with it, you know. So it's yeah, it's necessary.
Well, we've
It's
forgotten how to
necessary.
live. Many of us have forgotten, literally, we have forgotten how to live. We have forgotten who we are, where we are. We've just become so disconnected. And at this point, it is each and every one of our responsibility to get back in touch.
Yes.
Even though
Agreed.
it's not our fault that we've been we were born into a world that is not supporting our connection with Mother Earth. But it's now, as we become aware, as we get this information and put it to the test. You don't have to believe what we're saying, but just try it out and see if
Exactly.
it makes a difference in your life.
Exactly. I agree with you completely. And you know, one of our topics today that Yurvan's bringing forward so nicely for us is communication with plant and animals. And I mean, you have to think, what are these plant and animals telling us that are being genetically modified and just being absolutely inundated with chemicals? And it's going right into the structure of the plant, these chemicals, you know? So, you know what I mean? Like, they're screaming out at us to stop this madness, you know, to at least do whatever we can, right? To put an end to it, to put some resistance up. So, you know, it's really worth thinking about.
Yes.
But maybe you could share some of your ideas about that subject, Yerman, because I don't know much about it and it's really interesting to me.
Sure, absolutely. I would love to. This is one of those topics that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's actually plant spirit communication is my saving grace. It's one of my gifts in life that I've always had, and it's not logical. It's not even something that I initially got from any books, but of course I've read a lot of books about it and grown in my understanding of this. But you said something about how the plants are screaming out for our help. And it's true. Plants do have spirits and they do have a level of intelligence and they communicate just like we do. I'm sorry, can you hear that plane right now? It's a lot
That's
of
okay. I
planes.
can hear you louder.
Okay, good. For some reason, I'm currently located in a spot where it's close to San Francisco and there's a lot of planes overhead, so I can pause if you need me to. But I'm just dealing with the elements as they are.
Yes.
So the plants do have an intelligence, and the way to I think I'm gonna pause. This is so distracting. Like, okay.
Oh, I think we're okay. I think it's gone. I think
Okay.
it's fading away. Okay.
So that it's just really loud.
Oh, is that a helicopter or what is that?
It might be actually. I just really wanted to be outside for this topic though. I don't care. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's noise. There's birds.
Yeah, it's
chirping.
fine. It's fine.
I just recently did a talk about sound and sound effects because we are always being affected by sounds in our environment as well. So it's important for us to develop a working relationship with plants. And it's not necessary for everyone to become aware of plant spirits, but even when you do, whether you do or you don't, in other words, it's important to understand that there's a relationship between us and the plants, and that we can help the plants more when we have this communication, when we have this respect, and they can help us more. It goes two ways. Everything that we need for our overall well-being is provided by Mother Nature, and many poets throughout the centuries have spoken of plants, have observed plants closely. Rudolf Steiner said, "For every human illness, there exists a plant which is the cure." And I believe that to be true. Although, because so much has been hidden from us, we might not have access to or even know about anymore these cures that exist. And so many of these plants are being destroyed in the rainforest, for example. So
and also, not to break in, but also corrupted into pharmaceuticals, which would be, you know, the Bayer angle here again.
Yes, plants are exploited. Yes, certain chemicals in the plants and certain aspects of the plants that could be healing are used. It's like energy can be used or abused. You know, it can be used for
Hmm.
good or used for ill, and that's what's happening, definitely. Because most pharmaceutical drugs do have some sort of plant compound in them. Um, and then they've been manipulated and just turned into
A bunch of
this.
toxic things have been added to them, and yes. Hmm.
Yes. So, um, a good book that came out in the early 70s that many people, I mean, it became a uh, pretty wide-selling book called The Secret Life of Plants. Have you heard of it? By Peter Tompkins and
Yes.
Christopher Bird. That's a
And I
wonderful.
recently wrote or read something about the secret life of tree, or how trees are, yeah, communicate with each other and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
similar vein.
Yes. Yes. And um, there was a garden in Scotland also around that time. I don't remember the exact year, but called the Findhorn Gardens, and they were just a small group of people or family in the beginning, and they had a very close relationship with the plant spirits. This is going to sound new agey for sure, but I don't care because I
I
think
think
it's
Fandhorn is New Age, just to
yeah,
put that out there. But
yeah,
still, there's still some valuable things coming through New Age. So yes,
yeah. There,
let's.
there are some valuable things about it,
Yeah.
which is that um, the way that they got these huge vegetables is not through manipulating the soil with all kinds of things. I mean, they communicated with the plants, and through that communication we're able to get the best yield. And what, who knows, maybe that story was made up, but other people have done this. I've known other people who have
I
accomplished the same
think
thing.
I think just about every gardener talks to their plants. Yes, absolutely. Even, I talk to my house plants. I think most people talk to their house plants. I think it's a natural thing. I think you're right. And we've been taught that oh, that's crazy. Like I sometimes have to look around to see if see if anyone's seeing me talking to my plants. But that's I agree. That's a natural thing to do. People would just naturally do that. But that's been something that's been sort of severed and considered woo woo, like you say, when it's just reality.
Yes, absolutely. And so we've just forgotten how to listen to the plants, basically. That's just something I tend to do. I'm not claiming to be any great gardener or botanist or anything. I'm not an expert in that way, but
Neither
usually
am I.
when I take the time, the plants just indicate to me what they're about, and then later I can do my research to verify what I got. And but usually it's 9 times out of 10 it's correct. And so that is part of what led me onto this path of um, producing flower essences and writing a small book about them. And I do intend to write more about them in the future, since it's a passion. It's not just a hobby, but it's um, how I healed myself from autoimmune illness that had me bedridden for about 7 years. Was my ability to just kind of intuit what were the plants saying to me, and how does my body react. Not all plants interact the same with all people. There's an overall, there's a um, there's a blueprint that each plant has, just like we each have our own blueprint. There's a specific action that it may have, but it's not going to have exactly the same effects on every person. So we need to start paying attention to the food we eat and the things that surround us and the relationship that we have to our plants and our animals around us, because everything is much more unique than we've been told as well. And
Absolutely.
and there's no cure-all pill. um, and that's the thing, is it's, yes, certain herbs are good for certain things. Certain foods will have certain effects, but I would like to encourage people to become more aware of their own unique responses. What is my relationship to these apples, and what is my relationship when I drink chamomile tea? Like, because it's not identical. That's there, and that's why you
Absolutely.
get so many different results. If you go Google it, for example, you're going to get so many different types of responses that people have, and they're all correct for different things, for different times. You know, you can have, you can take an herb like an adaptogen, for example, and which is, it's called an adaptogen because it helps your body adapt to stress, to become more resistant or resilient. And a lot of athletes take adaptogens to increase their performance or to speed up their recovery, for example. But adaptogens mean that because it's helping your body adapt, it's going to help you if you are sleep deprived, or you know, something like that, then it's going to relax you. But if you are sluggish and you need to get going, need some energy, it's going to stimulate you. So that's why it's called an adaptogen, you know. And
very
so,
interesting.
you know, there's so
what
much.
are some of the plants? What are some of the plant sources of adaptogens?
So different adaptogens are, ginseng is probably the most widely known. The Chinese, you know, Korean ginseng or red ginseng. It's probably the most widely known and used. But and it's great. It's very energizing. It tends to be very yang in its energy, for that get up and
that's
go.
what I would
It's
get
used
from
as
it.
an aphrodisiac. It's used to in sports, you know, sports supplements. But it's not necessarily good for all people. It's not often good for women. So it just depends, or it can be better.
Surprise, surprise! The bad, you know what I mean? The women are just shoved to the side. It's okay. They'll just make this a blanket thing for people.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, in small doses, it can be good when it's combined with other things. And there's different types of ginseng. And then there are things that are called ginseng that aren't. There's Eleutherococcus senticosus. There's American ginseng. There's Siberian ginseng, which is the Eleuthero. There's rhodiola rosea. And a lot of adaptogens actually come from the Altai region, the mountains, and Siberia, Russia, a lot of places that are really high up, you know, difficult to reach. That's where some of the most powerful medicines are found. But even in our own gardens, even in our own wilds, if we live in America or Canada, just all parts of the world have their own unique medicines and adaptogens. And so I think it's important to get to know our own region and what medicine is there for us, because in some ways it's even more important to establish a relationship, just like with people who say if you have allergies, take bee pollen that's within a 50-mile radius of where you live. Somehow that's supposed to counteract the allergies. I think there's a similar thing with having a relationship to food and herbs that grow in your own environment. That, whoops, I think I lost you there with the two-way. Oh, there we are again. So anyway, there's a lot more that I could say about adaptogens, but I don't want to get too far off course with that.
Yeah, that gives people a basic, and I will say that I know that I'm a person who can't take ginseng. So there are people, as Deirdre's saying, it's very individual, and you have to work with your own body's responses. And the reason, actually, just as an aside, the reason I made that little remark about the women is that low carb diets have been shown to cause hormone disruption and period cessation in women, and I actually experienced that myself. But that's been buried in the whole low carb craze. The fact that, you know, it causes these problems for women, and these are fairly substantial problems. That they did a study on teenage girls, and 45% of the girls on low carb diets had hormone problems, and 30% of them had their periods stop altogether. So, you know, the thing about the health food industry is it gets a little guru-ish, and it gets a little and hyped and trendy, very trendy. People all want the newest thing that's going to make them a superhuman. But the thing about it is you have to kind of get beneath that rhetoric. And so in that vein, do you do flower essence consultations with people, Yervon, and sort of intuitively choose them for people?
Yes, I do. I generally start by asking someone what they want to work on, what's the primary issue in their life currently, and get a sense of, what's been happening in their life. It's the same thing as when you go into an office to see some other practitioner. They want to know what your health history is, and it's not because there's any going to be any conflicts with any medications, because flower essences are very subtle. They're not acting on the physical level, they're acting on the emotional and mental levels. So, but it's just to get an idea of where someone is at. So as much information as I can get in advance about where someone is at physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, that all becomes the full picture that I can work with. And then I will, oftentimes what will just happen is something will just pop into my mind. Oh, that could be good. Or maybe it's a combination of 2 or 3 things. It can get bigger. I mean, it can be a combination of 5 or more things, but generally I try to keep it simple for something that people are going to take internally, because I really want that to be what they notice. Is I want one thing to be working on them instead of so many things they don't know what's doing what. I do more of the multiple combinations when I do sprays, because it's just it doesn't maybe matter as much in that case. But when you're internalizing something, it's more of a personal, it's more of an inner experience, right? So you want to have the most simple, pure experience possible for that. And so sometimes I will use a pendulum. I actually don't do that as much anymore. I did that in the beginning until I became comfortable with just intuiting, or just after I grew my memory base of a lot of different essences. I didn't need to do that as much. But yeah, sometimes I'll just sit with it for a while until something pops up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a really good point about the multiple things, because that's one thing that I find with health food products a lot of time is there are so many ingredients that someone could react poorly to, that they almost just pour. I mean, some of these have like 20 or 30 different plant-based items, and yeah, like it honestly kind of freaks me out that people are just kind of tossing this back, because you really don't know how your body's going to react. So I think a consultation is a good thing, and I like your philosophy. So you said that you make the flower essences yourself. Could you tell us a little bit about what goes into that process?
Sure. Although I just want to clarify that when I do prepare blends for people, I don't necessarily make them myself always. I have a collection of essences from different companies, such as FES,
Yes.
Alaskan flower essences, just so many different brands. But yes, I also do them, and I also do gem elixirs, which is the crystal version or the stone version of the flower essences. And what goes into that, I actually talk about that in my guidebook, Flower Spirit Medicine, which is available on Lulu, or at lulu.com or Amazon. I talk about how you basically you go into a respectful, calm state of mind when you're doing this, because that's going to go, everything around it is going to go into the essence. And it's actually quite simple. The sunlight method is the most popular, so I'll just quickly explain that. The sunlight method, it's quite an alchemical process in that you're employing all of the elements. You have the water, which is pure water, could be distilled or somehow purified water in a clear glass bowl. It's preferable that it's not decorated because, again, everything is, the patterns and shapes they're all going to be part of this essence. So a clear uh, glass bowl with the pure water, and then you find your location, somewhere that's going to be undisturbed. I I prefer to be somewhere in the wild if possible, but that's not always possible, of course. Um, and the morning is often the best time because that's when the air is clearer and the sun is coming down the brightest. And anywhere between 2 to 3 hours is sufficient for this process to take place, where the sun is coming down. You're going to put it not under the shade of a tree. Of course, you're going to put it in a spot where the sun can beam down into the water. And let's not forget the flower. So the flower can either be something that you have carefully picked, or it could sometimes be a flower that has fallen if it's all of its parts are still intact, or if it's the type of flower that you can bend without breaking, all the better. You can just bend it into the bowl of water so the blossom is in the water, and that is left there for a couple of hours as the sun beams down and potentiates the water and imprints the water with that pattern of the flower. So ultimately what you're getting is the pattern, not the perfume and not the herbal compounds, but you're getting
that's
pattern.
interesting. I didn't know that. I did not know that at all. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, and then you find if you just want to drink it all right then you can, or if you want to preserve it for later use, you have a bottle, anywhere between an 8-ounce bottle. It could be as large or small as you want to store. Of course, you're going to have enough alcohol to do half alcohol and half what the water is. And generally, a flower essence.
Sorry, and what type of alcohol is it that you use?
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Generally, people use brandy or some kind of vodka. So
it's a 50-50 mix?
Yes.
You said? Okay.
Yes, that's for what we call the mother essence. The mother essence is the one from which all other essences are derived. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to have half and half every time you make an essence. In other words, the mother is the one that will be shelved the longest. And that's why you need that much alcohol to preserve it. That's just so it doesn't grow mold and stuff. When you make a stock bottle, that's what you see in the market when you go to Whole Foods or when you go to these health food stores, and usually they have Bach flower essences, the 38 Bach flower essences.
That's the one that I've seen.
Yes, and some stores even have, at least here in the Bay Area, they also have the line of FES. But what you're getting is a very tiny bottle that is a stock bottle, which is derived from the mother bottle. And so that only has from 30 to 40% alcohol.
So how much of the mother would go into the stock bottle?
Well, that's an interesting question. So you really don't need that much of the mother to make the stock bottle. You could use anywhere between 10 to 20 drops into a bottle of water and alcohol.
And that's great information.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
It's different than herbal solutions. We're so used to taking herbs and having herbal solutions where the amount that you take increases the potency, but it's not like that with flower essences because it's not physical. It's etheric. It's acting on a different level, and it's most often connected with homeopathy, even though it's not exactly the same thing either. But it's similar because it's very subtle. It's subtle body medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say if you take you have to start slowly because I do remember taking a flower essence once and it was an emotional response, but it was such an intense emotional response that it actually laid me up in bed for about a day. So
Oh,
just because it was, and I'm
yeah.
also, a strange case because I'm sensitive to things that other people
Sure.
are not, and
Oh, sure.
I
That can
do
happen
this
though.
kind of heavy emotional work. So there's a lot of buildup probably. So yeah. So
That can
but
happen. I'm glad you mentioned that because, yeah, it's even though it's subtle, it doesn't necessarily mean it won't cause a reaction for some people, or if you take a lot. So that's the thing is, unlike an herb, um, it's not how much you take at once that makes it powerful or stronger. What makes a flower essence stronger or more, how would you say, noticeable is the frequency. So if you were to take it several times a day, then you're like hitting yourself several times with that energy. And yeah, that may or may not be a good thing or something that you can handle or something that you're ready for.
mhm.
It's not going to hurt you, but it can be very uncomfortable because it's bringing up an issue. You know, it's stirring the pot.
Yep.
Maybe you're not quite ready for that. So it's good to start small. Just start once or twice a day. I like to start first thing in the morning and the last thing at the end of the day, right before I go to sleep. So, but yes, they can be powerful in that way. Generally, if you take an essence that you don't need, unlike when you take a medicine that you don't need, it's not going to be harmful. What's usually going to happen is your your subconscious, your aura, whatever you want to refer that to, is going to shrug it off, like, whatever,
Mm,
I don't need that.
mhm.
So you
Oh,
won't
that's
notice
good.
it. Yeah, but if it's hitting something, and if it's hitting it something that's really blocked and really uncomfortable, then you might want to go slower. And that's the thing. You never know with an essence. Sometimes all you need is one dose once, bam. That's it. You
Right.
won't ever need it again. But with other issues that you have had for a long time, you're probably going to want to work with it for a while, over a course of many weeks or many months even, before you can
Yes.
notice a real change in yourself.
That's awesome. And so people can book a consultation with you through your website, I imagine?
Yeah, they can find me at Readings by Yerevan. Um,
Who wouldn't want a flower essence reading from Yerevan, consultation from Yerevan, after all this awesome information that she's shared with us?
Thanks. Well, I wanted to talk about one more thing since we're on the subject of
Sure,
flower essences. You mentioned
sure.
a flower essence for evildoer fatigue syndrome.
Yes. If you could help us with that, the world would be so happy.
Yeah, well, again, there was one that just immediately popped into my mind when you said that, and it actually happens to be a woman's herb, so to speak. It's black cohosh. You may have heard of it. Um,
I've heard of it. Yes.
yeah, and it's really amazing. It's a really amazing herb on all levels. It's or flower, I should say. It's both, the plant has both herbal qualities and is widely used as a flower essence. So on the I'll touch on the herbal side first
Sure.
because it's really interesting. This is native to North America or Eastern North America, and maybe even certain parts of
Oh,
Canada.
really?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and it was sacred to the Native Americans. They used it for the immune system. They used it for, apparently, for snake bites. Um, they used it for women's issues like starting childbirth, for menstrual issues, and for menopause. So all of the major rites of passage that a woman goes through, this herb is immensely useful. Um, and it was at one point used, even, it was once called bug bane because they used it as an insect repellent, and they don't anymore. I'm not quite sure why. But anyway, this is an herb that has estrogen-like qualities. I would say like because it doesn't have that. It's just that it can address those types of issues in people, in women. And on the other level, on the subtle level, this is a flower essence that is used for feelings of complete and utter despair or tremendous fear, um, for obvious reasons, not imagined, not it could be, yeah, it could be paranoia, it could be, but paranoia and fear that stems from having been abused or been in toxic environments, for having been threatened with violence. This is,
and that's really the collective condition that we are
yes,
in, whether
absolutely.
we like it or not, whether we're aware of it or not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it works on so many levels for so many different issues, and for uh, for abusive relationships, on the domestic side of things, it works for people that have suffered from, whether it's physical abuse or gaslighting, whatever, just a combination of different types of abuse. What it is said to inspire or evoke is the courage to confront rather than retreat from abusive situations. That is so key, because we need to become more empowered and get out of this victim consciousness that we're in. I think it's really hard, though. We're in a battle, and we need all of the strength and empowerment and warrior type of inspiration that we can get, and that's what this flower inspires in us. It's, in a way, it is more the goddess side of that, the goddess warrior, the Kali, like the raging mother, our Sekhmet energy that's going to protect her cubs, her children.
So this will help with the resistance to GMOs and everything we're talking about,
Yes, absolutely. Because we need to, I'm not going to say we need to get mad, but we need to get proactive. We need to, if anything, that anger is a tool, once it's tapped into, for us to do something about it, and not just sit there and be like, this is happening, well, do something about it. Let's get up, and you don't have to do it alone. Just start the process.
I think that's the thing. I do bristle a little bit at the concept of victim consciousness, because I do see how people are being victimized intentionally through the way that the system is. And I know that when you're isolated and you feel like it's all heaping on you, right? That's when you can get kind of stuck in that mindset where it's like, oh, why bother? Poor me, the despair and the depression and just giving up, right? But when you see that it's not just you, it's not just you that's experiencing these things, then I think you can kind of gather strength from that, from the fact that this is a sociological phenomenon. You can apply the sociological imagination. You aren't stuck in your own little bubble of problems. Your little bubble of problems is connected to, this giant bubble that that almost everyone is really being affected by. And then you can draw strength to fight, because that when you're fighting for yourself, you're also fighting for everyone else. And ultimately, you may get some flack for it. You may get some vilification, alienation, ostracism, whatever. But ultimately, you're going to tap into the other people who have had enough, right? The other people who are saying, anything's better than this. Anything's better than just burying my head in the sand, turning aside, giving up, throwing my hands up. Anything's better than that. So any amount of action. And yeah, I love the idea that this flower essence can really kind of spur that. It's great. Do you think it could spur also the idea, the feeling that you're not alone with this type of stuff? Is there a sort of connection point to that? I don't know about that so much, because Callie is pretty much just on a mission, herself, right? Or that's what it seems like to me. I don't know if it's a collective mission in her mind, but I suppose it is. I suppose that's why she's so fierce about it, right? She's fighting for all of us, not just herself.
Well, yeah, that's a concept, and I think it's a valuable one in this case. I think it's Isha Lerner. She's an author, and she's a flower essence practitioner and producer, and she's actually the one that came up with that concept of Kali being the archetypal energy associated with black cohosh. And it's such a it's a metaphor for coming out of because the roots are just really black and gnarly, and out of that black gnarliness comes this amazing, beautiful, these white blossoms, which indicate, well, symbolize transformation, similar to the concept of the lotus, which comes from the mud, and then it becomes this beautiful, pristine flower that is now the symbol of for all the deities, the Buddha and all of the Hindu gods and goddesses are depicted on sitting or standing on a lotus. So that's how the lotus became such a spiritual symbol. It's
Yes.
the ultimate.
So the idea being that we all go through these dark times, we all go through these trials and tribulations, and more so these days because we have this stuff being sort of intentionally rained down upon us from a top-down level, and people are blaming themselves or feeling like they're being singled out, but it's actually a widespread phenomenon. Cipro poisoning would be a particular instance. So many people with cipro poisoning feel so alone, and I did as well. But then when you start to do some research and you start to look around, you realize there are millions of us out there. There are millions of us all feeling like we're alone. No one understands what we're going through. We're going through hell. We don't know how to get out of it, et cetera, right? So then when you're able to make that connection, it's a really empowering point. And I call that the Plutonic sociological imagination. And Callie, I think it would be associated with the astrological body of Pluto, I believe.
Absolutely.
So,
but I just wanted to comment on what you said. I understand what you meant about having an issue with the concept of victim consciousness, but where I'm coming from with saying that is the very fact that we are so attacked and bombarded, and to me it's a way of saying let's shake the cage, let's get a little.
Yes.
I'm actually with you on that.
Yes.
We have to
I agree.
We have to kind of get sick of it so we can change it, right? I mean,
and you're right. I mean, you are right. There is a cycle of that, of that mentality and just the poor me and literally just staying passive with it, and sometimes people are paralyzed under their problems. So there is that element of it, right? But yes, it's finding that strength, just that stepping stone to push back. And we're coming into the Chiron and Aries years. Well, we're in the Chiron and Aries years. Chiron will go back into Pisces later this year, but we're planting a flag on this point. Chiron being the wounded healer, and Aries being a sign related to action, and sometimes aggressive action, right? Fighting for your rights, fighting for yourself, fighting for just using your instincts to survive whatever's being thrown your way. So I think I think it's just a point of terminology. It's also a concept that the New Age often uses to, I would say, blame victims for their own circumstances rather than understanding the sociological reasons for these problems that are coming down. So it's the creating your own reality shtick. People in bad circumstances are creating that themselves because they're stuck in victim's consciousness. Well, there might be an element of that, but the real reason they're in victim consciousness is because they're legitimately being victimized and attacked and hurt, right? So, and it's being intentionally brought down.
I'm not gonna lie. It's not easy to go against the grain and to push against and push through on a day like we were talking earlier, when there's days when I felt completely just sucked into the digital world or just whatever, all these different forms of attack that we're under, and all of this, just the urban life that feels completely unnatural. I've never really gotten used to it.
Absolutely.
But,
no.
At some point, once you get going, once you open your eyes, once you go take that step and you see, I mean, there's something, I don't know if it's something in our psychology that causes us to be a little bit lazy and wanting things to just be taken care of for us. But sometimes I've noticed that in myself. I really have to, go again. I feel like I'm going against some sort of programming or some sort of resistance. Maybe it's from inside of myself because I know it's going to make me feel better, and I'm so used to feeling awful. So I know that every situation and person is different too. I'm not labeling everyone that's suffering in some way to be in a form of victim consciousness. So I want to make that clear that I just think there are a lot of people that purposefully turn a blind eye, don't want to hear it. I've experienced this my whole life.
Willful
When I've told
ignorance.
people, hey, even if I educate someone out of the kindness of my heart in a polite way, I'm not attacking them. I'm not saying I know better than, well, I'm not saying I'm any better than that. Let me show you or explain to you how this is actually toxic. And here's a solution for that problem. Some people are excited and grateful for that information. The other people are just, they look at you like, what? You know, like just like you just came from outer space, or how dare you interrupt their flow. So
absolutely. You're right. I mean, they definitely, you know, and it's something it's socially engineered as well, right? To be passive, to feel like there's nothing you can do anyway, you know, so you might as well just go along with everything, which is not the case at all, you know, because I mean, even one person can have a huge change. And if you, you know, if you add all those one people up, it's a massive force that you can actually tap into if you're, like you say, you're able to kind of almost force yourself to act or to make a change.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that evildoer fatigue information. All of the information. And I will just mention again, Yerevan's book is, and we're not schlepping our products here through this show, but people have to understand that this is how we make a living. We're not doing this just for fun. You know, this is what we do. This is our career. This is what we do. So if you like what we're doing and you would like to see us, you know, continue doing it, then one of the things you can do is you can support these products, you know, when they're available. So Yerevan's book is Flower Spirit Medicine, and it's available on lulu.com and amazon.com. So, and she's also available for flower essence consultations, which I imagine would be hugely healing, because even just hearing you talk about that stuff is like an elixir to my soul right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Willow. It was a great show.
Yeah, it was. Thanks so much for the talk, and we will look forward to episode number 3. You guys can check it out probably sometime next month.
Right on.
Thanks for listening and watching.
Thank you.